On July the 4th, 1928, a band of soldiers broke into the largest royal mausoleum complex in the world at Dunhuang in China's Hebei province and looted it. It was claimed that they found innumerable treasures and gold inside the mausoleum. Even the treasures of the Forbidden City were said to pale in comparison to what was found there. It undoubtedly deserved its nickname of the Golden Mausoleum. Of the 15 royal mausoleums of the Eastern Qing tombs, there's one belonging to a woman who had effective control of the Qing Dynasty for 48 years. Her name was Empress Dowager Cixi, and her tomb is named Dingdongling. Both the mausoleums built for Emperor Xianfeng's 2 wives are called Dingdongling. Located in the northwestern section of the complex, they are respectively the tombs of Empress Dowagers Cixi and An. The construction of Dingdongling started in 1873, as both dowagers reigned from behind the curtain, as it were. Both tombs were completed in 1879, and each cost over 2 million taels of silver. In the summer of 1928, China's National Revolutionary Army arrived in Hebei province during their northern expedition. Qing Dynasty, a former warlord, stationed his troops in Dunhuang. On July the 4th, he decided to rob the Eastern Qing tombs to help boost his military funds. Without much consideration for history or his own culture, he chose Cixi's tomb as the victim of his plunder. The tombs look quite similar. Why did Sun choose Cixi's tomb as his target? There are dozens of villages scattered around the mausoleum complex. Most of the villagers are descendants of tomb guardians. There were stories going around at the time Sun arrived in the area about the treasures in Cixi's tomb.
就把这个棺材打开以后就满了，就全是里3层外3层，底下垫着的，是上头盖着的，全是金财宝。
两边四周围都搁金财宝，都搁好了，棺材盖上了，搁地宫里了。
Ever since Cixi's burial, it was rumored that the tomb was overflowing with gold and other treasure. Sun Dianying must have heard about this, which is why he chose Cixi's tomb as the main target. Was the tomb as luxurious as the stories had foretold? What happened during the robbery? When the marauders rushed into the 3 main halls, they were stunned. It was indeed a golden mausoleum. The walls of the eastern and western halls were decorated with exquisite carvings. They'd been covered in gold, using a special gold spraying technique.
What is扫金呢？就是把那金子呀打成细粉，提前呢在这墙壁上刷上一种粘合剂，然后把这金粉呢喷洒到这个上面， 这种工艺就叫扫金。
This pattern was covered with a large amount of fine gold powder. Unable to peel the gold off the wall, Sun and his bandits left it alone. So people are still able to appreciate it today. The 64 pillars in the 3 main halls of Cixi's tomb were stripped of all their ornate decoration. But according to historical records, there was a gilded copper dragon on every pillar. Sun and his men stole all 64 of them. In modern times, expert craftsmen have managed to reproduce 4 replica dragons. The dragon's bodies would have measured 35 centimeters at their widest, with the head at the bottom of the pillar and the tail at the top. Thanks to built-in springs, the whiskers would sway with the flow of air. These gilded dragons are unique among all previous generations of imperial mausoleum decorations. Similar extravagances don't exist anywhere, not even in the Forbidden City.
咱们中国殿宇等级最高、体量最大的就是紫禁城的太和殿，里边有72根柱子，只有中间那6根柱子啊是盘龙的。
最代表皇权威严的太和殿，那么它这个大殿里面才有这个6根金柱。 这6根金柱实际上呢，它都是这个泥金的，也就是把这个柱子用金粉刷成金色，然后在这个上面画了6条龙。
The sight of these 64 gilded dragons must have thrilled the tomb raiders. They took each and every one of them away. The ceiling of the main hall is now left with over 500 empty cells, which used to contain coloured paintings with a gold overlay. The gold in each cell weighed over 1 tael. Now, only 5.5 pieces remain on the ceiling in memory of its past glory. The beams and eaves of the 3 main halls were decorated with over 2,400 golden dragons. These golden dragon paintings, drawn in various colours, featured vivid dragon patterns. They demonstrate the highest level of painting skill in Qing royal architecture. All the dragon paintings in the 3 main halls of Cixi's tomb were covered with gold, atop wooden structures. Gold of the highest purity was forged into thin leaves and then wrapped over the dragon, cloud and flower patterns. As Cixi saw it, this would make the halls look more grand and dignified.
它在这个用黄金上啊，那是史无前例的。它的3殿装饰啊，光印黄金一项啊，就用了4592两，1004分03毫。那么这么多的黄金来进行装饰，啊，装饰在它的天花板上，装饰在它的柱子上，装饰在了墙壁之上啊，所以用了大量的黄金。那么慈禧陵的这个建筑啊，可以说是金碧辉煌啊，明清皇家建筑，不要说陵寝，就连紫禁城的大殿都无法与之相比。
In March 1881, Empress Dowager Sir Anne passed away at the age of 45. The cause of death remains unclear, but afterwards, Cixi had no rivals. Since Emperor Guangxu was so young, Cixi became the supreme ruler of the Qing Dynasty. The tombs of both dowagers were intended to be identical. But, following her expansion of power and feelings of self-importance, Cixi was not satisfied to remain at the same level of extravagance as Sir Anne. In 1894, Cixi planned a grand celebration for her 60th birthday. This was despite the fact that the Qing army had just been defeated during the First Sino-Japanese War. China was forced to sign the humiliating Treaty of Shimonoseki and pay Japan a war indemnity of 200 million taels of silver. Cixi regretted not being able to celebrate her birthday properly due to a lack of ready funds. Nevertheless, in 1895, she found the money for the renovation of her tomb and ordered the work to begin immediately. It was during this renovation that her tomb began to exceed the opulence of Sir Anne's. The halls were coated with gold and treasures. Cixi seemed determined to bury herself in riches after her death. This picture was taken shortly after Sun plundered Cixi's mausoleum. A pickaxe can be seen at the entrance. This must have been how the thieves got into the underground palace. But how did they find the right place to break in?
所以我们在看这个当时档案的时候，一些个民国年间报纸的时候，里面就看到啊，孙殿英的部队里面忽然出现了一个白胡子老兵，啊，一个白胡子老兵。那么这个白胡子老兵还拖了一个小辫儿，啊，很明显这是一个守陵人，干什么呢？让他来指点地宫的入口。
It's said that Sun intimidated the tombkeeper into showing him the entrance of the underground palace. Then they broke in and ransacked the place. Today, Cixi's mausoleum is open to the public as part of China's cultural heritage. The tourists' favorite spot seems to be Cixi's underground burial palace. There are obvious chips on the underground palace's first marble gate. These are marks left by the looters as they try to force the gate open.
我们看它地宫的两道石门中间有这个刀凿斧砍的痕迹，那其实那是当时失败的这个做法，啊，用刀凿斧砍，那只能砍到一点儿，那把那个厚大的石门那个打开，那还是很艰难的。
It can be imagined that the plunderers went underground, eager for riches. At the same time, they were on the lookout for any lurking dangers. They pushed the white marble gate violently. But each gate weighed over 3 tons. Had a large stone behind it to keep it closed. It was impossible to push it open. The plunderers tried to chop and cut away the bottom of the gate. That's what left these marks.
但最后采取的用一种大木撞击这样一种形式，才把地宫石门打开。
It wasn't immediately clear how many treasures the plunderers would have found inside Cixi's coffin. The imperial eunuch Li Lianying and his nephew kept records showing that 27 gold, jade and emerald Buddha statues, over 200 emerald watermelons, cabbages and jade fruit, as well as over 700 jade sculptures of horses and arhats had been placed inside Cixi's coffin.
那么他头顶一个翡翠大荷叶，脚踩一个碧玺大莲花，然后石身周围为了填补官缝，又放进了大量的珍珠和大量的各色的宝石包括这个红宝石的这个枣啊，黄宝石的杏子啊等等，大量的这个宝贝都放到棺材之中，使慈禧陵棺材慈禧的尸体周围都塞满了珍宝。
To make sure the coffin was as full as possible, 4 litres of pearls and more than 2,200 pieces of jade were also poured in. The treasures inside Cixi's coffin were estimated to be worth over 50 million taels of silver. At that time, the state treasury held no more than 70 million taels of silver. This is a picture taken just after the pillaging ended. Almost all the funeral objects were looted, except for the clothes on Cixi's body and a sheet embroidered with the Great Compassion mantra, which was thrown down in the underground palace. On July the 10th, 1928, Sun loaded 20 trucks and fled after a 7-day looting spree. No one knows for sure how many treasures were taken or where they are today. In fact, today the treasures are nowhere to be found. But there are still many clues in Cixi's tomb revealing her wishes and desires when she decided to have it renovated. The first thing Cixi did was to alter the marble carving slope on the steps in front of the main hall. This acts as a symbol of royal identity. It employed a high relief technique. The feet and crest of the phoenix and the whiskers and claws of the dragon were hollowed out. This piece of treasure held special meanings for Cixi. All the mausoleums of the Qing emperors contain similar carvings, including the one in Yuling, the tomb of Emperor Qianlong. Usually, the phoenix would be positioned lower than the dragon, showing that the emperor represented heaven and the empress consort represented earth. But Cixi didn't follow the rule. On this stone carving, the phoenix is above the dragon, signifying that Cixi herself is heaven, while the emperor is earth. There are 76 balustrades situated around the main hall. It was routine to have alternate dragon and phoenix patterns on the capitals. But on the capitals of the balustrades in Cixi's tomb, there are only phoenix patterns and not a single dragon. The dragons are instead sculpted on the shafts, with one on each of two sides. Therefore, the phoenix appears to be suppressing the two dragons beneath it. Such a unique design reveals Cixi's inner thoughts about her position and importance. In 1861, 6-year-old Tong Zhe ascended the throne. Empress Dowagers Cixi and Ce'an began to handle state affairs in the background. Right up to his death at the age of 19, Tong Zhe had been nothing but a puppet emperor. When Tong Zhe died, he was succeeded by 3.5-year-old Guangxu. Cixi remained the all-powerful ruler. In 1898, Guangxu attempted to regain power through political reform. But Cixi organized a coup and imprisoned him. Cixi controlled the Qing Dynasty for 48 years. Both emperors Tong Zhe and Guangxu had been her puppets.
这个名字挺好听，说叫出水蛟龙，实际上呢就是凤在上面压了2条龙，那么就代表了这个西套慈禧呢曾经控制了统治光绪呢这个2朝天子，这个是非常有创意的。
Since Cixi had never claimed to be an emperor, she was only entitled to the tomb of an emperor's consort. Yet, being the actual ruler of the Qing Empire, she could not allow herself to be represented in this way. She would not violate tradition, but she still wished to demonstrate her supreme power. These stone carvings served as an ideal tool to help her realize her plan. In 1900, 6 years after Cixi had ordered the redecoration of her tomb, the 8-power Allied forces swept into Beijing. At 11 o'clock on September the 7th, 1901, Minister Li Hongzhang signed the Boxer Protocol with 11 Western powers in the Spanish embassy in Beijing. 450 million taels of silver were to be paid as the Boxer indemnity. Added to the indemnity of the First Sino-Japanese War, China now found itself having to find and pay out more than 650 million taels of silver. Yet, even as the Qing Empire stood on the verge of fiscal collapse, the renovation of Cixi's tomb continued. She was determined to make it a truly golden mausoleum. In October 1908, when her spectacular tomb was finally finished, the now terminally ill Cixi was delighted. On the evening of November the 14th, 1908, 38-year-old imprisoned Emperor Guangxu passed away. The same day, 3-year-old Pu Yi ascended the throne and became Emperor Shuangtong. The next day, during the afternoon, Cixi passed away at the age of 74, having ruled China for almost 5 decades. 3 years later, the revolution of 1911 overthrew the Qing Dynasty and drove Pu Yi off the throne. 19 years after her death, Cixi's underground palace was broken into by warlord Sun Dianying. She had never anticipated that her tomb would be robbed, her coffin ruined, and her body defiled. Yet all of it was, to some extent, self-inflicted, because of the opulence of her exquisite golden tomb. Cixi's Dingdongling was the most exquisite and luxurious mausoleum of the Ming and Qing dynasties. She may have hoped to save the struggling Qing Empire, but the extravagance of her own tomb had become the last straw that finally crushed the Qing dynasty. Emperor Shunzhi had chosen the location of the Eastern Qing tombs himself. It was supposed to be an auspicious site that would give blessings to the Qing dynasty down the ages. Today, the royal mausoleums are not as glamorous as they used to be, but nevertheless, they certainly epitomize a once powerful and prosperous Chinese dynasty.